Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTN for tonight's coverage of the TRC Sprint Cup EU Season 5 Round 5. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here for the second time covering Season 5 of TRC's Sprint Cup EU variant. And unlike last time, where you found us in mixed conditions over in Le Castellet, France, we've taken a break away from Europe and by proxy as well in the earlier rounds, North America, as we take the trip across the Pacific to the lands down under. Here in arguably the most iconic circuit in Australian motorsports, the Mount Panorama Circuit. Founded in 1938 and comprised of a whopping 23 turns and 6.2 kilometres, that's 3.8 miles, of FIA Grade 3. This is home to the Bathurst 1000 and Bathurst 12 Hour across both the Supercars Championship and the Intercontinental GT Challenge. It is a formidable circuit that has provided fantastic racing here on Assetto Corsa Competizione for many, many years. And today, it's home to round 5 of the championship. We're on board with Sean Johnstone, and picking up the pieces from where we left off since our last coverage at round 2 of the championship, let's take a swift look into how things have been going so far this season, starting things off with the race winners. Now, of course, with the complex nature of the TRC Sprint Cup Season 5, we have 4 categories to break down, and here are all of your race winners. Across the pro category, we've seen across round 1 and round 2 in the first double races of the season, it was Francesco Panebianco, Andrea Marcea and Simone Lopafido to pick up race wins across the Red Bull Ring and Paul Ricard. Then into the standalone first of 2 American races, the first enduro of the season at Indianapolis, Marcea took another victory. Then we saw the first victory for Antonio DiCaprio at the first of 2 races at the Circuit of the Americas last round, Simone Lopafido picking up his second in race 2. Looking down in the silver category, it's been majoritively a story of traded win between Lawrence Ernst and Joel Catello. We've seen sprinklings, though, of victories across our coverage of Paul Ricard for 2 ubiquitous names in category, Norbert Horvath and Rudolf Slanieks. Down in the bronze category, Dan Rick dominated 4 races on the trot, and then into his 5th at round 3, it came to Jose Brito's doorstep to pick up his first race win of the season. Dan Rick picked things back up for race 1 of 2 in the Circuit of the Americas, and Brito back on top in race 2. Down in the open category, we've seen that in spite of how things fared coming into round 2 with a very small number of scoring drivers and a very low number of attendees from category, that category has since exploded in popularity, as now we see Tom Barlow, Franz Hermans and Eduardo Ordoni all picking up wins in category across the season so far. Barlow, however, dominating with 5 current race wins so far in the championship. As far as that concerns things, then starting off in the topic of the championship standings, starting with the opens, we see that Barlow leads by 34 points over Franz Hermans in second. Eduardo Ordoni was late into the championship, joining at round 4 onwards, and round 3 onwards, I should say, picking up his maiden race win in Indianapolis, and then 2 back-to-back podium finishes in the Circuit of the Americas to put him 3rd place in the championship ahead of Free Chile and Roland 182 to round out that top 5. Those 2 separate as it stands by 14 points beside each other. Francesco Gnassato in 6th place, and up and ahead, I should say, there of Elias Ventrea in 7th, Will Taylor in 8th, and then a joint 9th between Jack Shaw and Ignacio Ganiz at the back of the open category. Moving things up into the bronze, first of our proper pyramid scheme drive here, as we see the lower echelon, the bronze standings. Then we're up to silver and gold thereafter. We see Dan Rick dominating so far with 24 points up over Jose Brito. These 2 trading blows here for control of category. Ruben Pereira and Armando Davoli making the last 2 scoring positions, as according to the SimGrid standings as it stands here. Looking in the silver category, Joel Catello and Lawrence Ernst at the forefront of the championship. The closest gap of any category we see so far, only 10 points withstand between the 2 leading BMWs. Daniel Richards, having since moved up, the last time we saw him was 7th, now 3rd in the championship, and 2 points ahead of Andre Hromko in 4th, Melon Vincent 5th, Norbert Horvath in 6th, Simon Smith 7th, Florian in 8th, Adam Hurtos in 9th, and Rudolf Slanieks in 10th place. Last but not least then, the top echelon of this series, the gold standings. And with Andrea Marcea leading as it stands by 34 points over Simone Lopafido, things do get rather interesting when you consider that after lackluster results in the trailing end of last round at the Circuit of the Americas, Marcea is now registered as a DSQ, perhaps indicating his withdrawal from the championship entirely. Now, this leaves an open throne for Simone Lopafido to come and take helm of this championship, but chasing him every step of the way is going to be Sean Johnstone, only 13 points behind. We see as well things are looking rather interesting for two drivers in those standings, Emmanuel Coppola and Antonio DiCaprio. Both of them previously, as you can see, they're registered with Ford, but most recently having emigrated over to Porsche. This is going to make for an interesting change of pace for those two there. They're 4th and 6th. Between them is Justin Benton at the back of the top 5, only separate from 4th by 5 points in the Gold Championship standings. Tom Wells in 7th with Eric Smith 8th, Sebastian Vorhauer 9th, and Kalle Polkinen in 10th place. And then last but not least, looking into what is the current standing of the regs for today's event. Much like what we saw at the circuit Paul Ricard is much to what we'll see today. We're in the midst of 30 minutes of free practice here at round 5, and with quali 1 coming up just around the corner. That's 10 minutes underway, and then race 1, I should say, of round 5 is 20 minutes, and then following all over again, quali 2 and race 2, another 10 and another 20. Neither of these two races have mandatory pit stops to play with, so it's open field for these drivers. And what is set to be possibly the most maddening race of the season here. This is an absolute powerhouse of a circuit, not to be trifled with here. Drivers of all skill brackets love and fear this circuit unilaterally. So we see here with Sean Johnstone currently out on track. Let's get a look into the current timing charts as we see already 6 cars onto the field. At the forefront of it, though, is Sean Johnstone, then Antonio DiCaprio, as mentioned, having moved away from Ford, now over to Porsche. We do see, though, a spot of bother on his run down Skyline. And speaking of, we'll get ourselves through the rundown of this track not far from now. Eduardo Odoni, 3rd fastest. We see here Vogt in 4th. In the number 11, Joel Catello in 5th place as it stands, and then Castle in 6th in the number 33. Currently lapping the track at this time, Lead Steinfeld and Melon Vincent. Timone Loperfido, the potential heir to the throne in this championship, making his way down towards the line to start another flying lap. We saw great hustle from him in Paul Ricard the last time we were able to capture for this fantastic championship. It's going to be exciting then to see at what is very likely the axis point for this championship standings, to see what Loperfido can do now in Marseille's absence. Also out on track at the moment, Justin Benton. A mighty livery indeed there. Is that a change of colours I see on the number 12 Mustang, making his way down the chase? Currently actually down the Conrod, now into the chase as we speak there, rounding in towards turn 20. It's a very pretty colour scheme there on that number 12. We also saw briefly in the background out on track earlier, the number 1 Tom Wells with Nissan. We're getting into the discussion of balance of performance in just a moment's time as we take a look. Another driver, of course, we mentioned having moved across to Porsche, away from Ford, Emmanuel Coppola in the number 66. We're rolling in 182, back on the field as well. Daniel Richards, but alongside him in the pit lane. See here the 333, one of the open category drivers. Plenty new faces having joined us over the course of the last 3 rounds. This is Nick Collins with Porsche at this time, making his way up and around McPhillamy in towards Skyline. You've seen the recent changes there. I believe that's O'Donnell was 3rd before, and now he still maintains that position, but by closer margins, just shy there as it stands of a 1/10 of a second. I believe they're about 94 thousandths we're talking between O'Donnell and DiCaprio across from that 1st to 2nd row here. And with this driver, oh, huge hit for the number 11. Oh, my word. How do we start practice off like this? I've seen cars up on 2 wheels plenty of time. Never before have I seen impacts like that. That is brutal, mirroring the same kind of sad fate that befell the Ford Falcon of Chaz Moster back in the 2015 Bathurst 1000. Ping-ponging off the walls down towards Forest Elbow. That's for one of the new drivers on the field as well, the number 11 down in the open category. We spoke on them just briefly with a Sebastian Vogt that ran into quite a heap of trouble down through the S's. My goodness. Quite the shock to the system to start off free practice like this. Vogt back out on track. He's alongside Joel Catello on our screens here, the number 260 at the forefront of the Silver Division Championships. Meanwhile, we see now, in the time since, things have shapen up for Simone Loperfido, now 2nd fastest in the session, behind Sean Johnstone, who's hunting down his first gold victory in the absence of drivers like Andrea Marcea. The throne's been left vacant, but might whom take its mantle? It is up to these two here, Johnston and Loperfido, so it's going to be curious to see how things unfold in the 2 races to follow. We believe that to be one of the bronze drivers there. That's Armando Davoli with Lamborghini joining us in the number 45, just having joined the session a moment ago. Oh, looking to catch on board with the driver currently lapping the track. We're going to go and see if we can catch on board with Liad Stainfeld. I do see the number 8 making their way down toward the line, but I think, yes, Stainfeld has run into some trouble. So we'll catch on board here with Simone Lopafido as things look to shape up a little bit tidier here. Currently tucked in behind that of Sebastian Vogt, the driver we saw take quite the beating down through the S's in towards Forest's Elbow just a moment ago, but now we're on board with Lopafido. Tucked in behind that green McLaren, then we see, clad in the colours of AF Corsa, the number 44, Ferrari 296, making his way up and around the chase. So Simone Lopafido looking to be the unofficial tour guide of the Mount Panorama circuit here at round 5 of season 5 of the TRC Sprint Cup EU. Or so we're led to believe there, as it looks like he's throwing the towel in after being stuck in behind Sebastian Vogt's number 11 car. Let's go to catch on board here, if we can, with either the 66 or the 182. I believe here we have the 66. This is Emmanuel Coppola. And as the graphics used to show here, Coppola used to be a driver for Ford, as you can hear quite clearly. As a matter of fact, if we turn the volume up, this is anything but Ford V8 territory anymore. We are talking the flat 6 scream of the Porsche 911 992. Out through Hell Corner then, on the run up the mountain straight we go on this unofficial tour of the Mount Panorama circuit here, courtesy of the number 66, heading up towards Griffin's Bend at turn 2. It is a monstrous sound from that Porsche. Let's just dial the volume back there so you can hear what we're saying. Up and around Griffin's Bend then, in towards the cuttings we go as we begin that run up over the mountain. In through turns 3 and 4, very tight section here. One wrong step and you're in at the wall. So out through turn 5 at Quarry we go. Round turn 6, up into turn 7 at Reed. Down through turn 8, turn 9 at Frog Hollow. Up past the Wall of Death here. Out through Solman, into McPhillamy Park. This long sweeping left-hander, you can see they're caught by the grass on the right-hand side, but he's still gunning for it. Down through Skyline, sometimes also called Brock Skyline, after Australian touring car legend Peter Brock. Down through the Dipper, into the S's, and a little scrape against the wall there. Down towards Forest's Elbow we go. Very sharp hairpin left down the hill. You can see very close to the wall, little scrape over his rear right, but he's still gunning for it. Out through turn 19 we go. Onto the Conrod straight then. This is the longer of 2 straights on this circuit, 1.9 kilometers to play with here. This will be flat out for all drivers over the course of today's 2 races to follow. Some debris on the track being swept up there by Daniel Richards. So for Emmanuel Coppola making his way down towards the chase we go. Then turn 20, into turn 21, heavy braking zone. Into this sharp chicane, and there we see kicked up over his side. The number 66 caught out by the chase. He will not be the only driver to meet that fate today. Out through turn 22 we go then, down towards the last corner at Murray's. Sharp left-hander to bring us to the end of what is an absolute roller coaster ride here at the Mount Panorama circuit. You can see how demanding it is on the drivers already, and this is just free practice. We're halfway through free practice at the moment. 15.5 minutes left to go before we get into the first of those 2 qualifying sessions. And as we've seen several times before here in Bathurst, qualifying could not be more vital. For both qualifying sessions, the drivers will have to see some of their best quali performances of the season emerge today if they are to find any modicum of success on the mountain. The mountain giveth and the mountain taketh away. Such has been the case of several runs around this perilous circuit. We've seen endurance races here and we've seen sprint races. We're likely to see even more action in the bag here of the TRC Sprint Cup EU Season 5. Cutting over to Nick Collins, one of the new drivers on the field, the 333, currently being tailed by Tom Barlow, the leader of the open category here in Season 5's championship standings. Up the inside went the number 23. Now, it's worth pointing out, we saw Tom Barlow not too long ago on our screens back in the opening round of the Competizione Performance League World Series at Silverstone. That 3x40 race we saw was plenty of opportunities for Barlow to sort of spread his wings and soar in that very same number 23 Ferrari 296. I'm very curious to see what he can do today, now not held up with a lack of a qualifying standing. Of course, we're still in free practice. We'll see what he can do in both qualifying sessions later on today. Things are already looking very spry for the number 23. Eduardo Odoni, as we see here, the winner in Indianapolis, making his way down toward the line. later entry into the championship in the open category. We've seen, though, since his entry into the American leg at Indianapolis, he's taken only podiums. 2 second-place finishes across the double races in the Circuit of the Americas in round 4, last round gone. Currently 7th fastest then in the session at the halfway mark. Taking a look at it, as it stands, it's a Ford 1-2. We've seen Ford dominate here in Bathurst. It's a track they understand rather implicitly. Several decades of history racing Ford Motor Company products at this circuit. The 7th generation Mustang was made for circuits like this, and we see the 99 of Sean Johnstone leading by 0.6 of a second up over Justin Benton in second. Simone Lopafido splits what could have been a Ford 1-2-3 in free practice today. Eric Smith, 4th fastest. And a driver now ex-Ford is Antonio DiCaprio, moving to Porsche. He and Emmanuel Coppola made that move not long ago, and we see here, it may have very well been a gamble not worth taking. Big stability concerns, as we saw for that of Coppola. We see the same story emerging here for DiCaprio. In the time since, we saw Eric Smith, now 3rd fastest. We saw him on the trailing end of his last flying lap. He now makes a Ford 1-2-3. Goes up the road by just under a 10th over Simone Lopafido in the number 44 Ferrari. This is the heir to the throne as it stands for gold. Not if Sean Johnstone has anything to say about it. It very likely looks to be the case that he does. The mid-engine cars we've seen could either blossom or absolutely dive bomb, really, in this circuit. It is a real law of extremes when it comes to these cars, whether or not they find great success or a lack thereof, for better term of expression. Down towards Forest's elbow, we see here with Lopafido making his way down towards the Conrod straight out through turn 19. We'll stay on board with him as we discuss now the look of the balance of performance coming into this round, and as the track would suggest, it's a law of extremes on paper too. Ferrari seem to find themselves with best in class, though, for weight reductions, 25 kilos off of the 296. So Lopafido will be grinning ear to ear to see information like this pop up. Lexus find themselves 2nd lightest in class under BOP restrictions because they're losing 21 kilos off of the RCF. Porsche losing 20, Nissan losing 17, BMW losing 16, Mercedes losing 11, Lamborghini losing 3, McLaren gaining 8, and Ford gaining 20. That's according to Simbot. Do take that with a grain of salt, but what we're seeing is, in spite of that 20 kilo extra ballast, it has done very little to stop what has been an indomitable stride by the Ford Motor Company to secure 1st, 2nd, and 3rd so far. The one possible challenger to this wall of the Blue Oval's machines could very well be this one, the number 44 Ferrari of Lopafido, making his way back towards turn 2 at Griffin's Bend on another flying lap. Still shy of that 3rd place spot. Eric Smith across the line a moment ago. Sadly, couldn't find an improvement over his last lap, but as it stands right now, he's put himself in a very comfy position as he's put pen to paper here to prove he is podium material here in Bathurst. Bear in mind, a lot of that still remains to be seen. They'll have a 1/3 of the time to play with over the course of the upcoming qualifying session. Taking a look back into the session itinerary to see where we'll be heading next. It's Quali 1 coming up around the corner. 10 minutes worth of qualifying to play with here before the first of 2 races today. Just coming up on the last 10 minutes, we see even the Fords are struggling under these conditions. Out through Quarry, we saw there on the run through the cuttings was quite the heavy bit of understeer for Smith at this time. That could very well be what's keeping him from the front row, still reinforced by Ford machines. But as we see here, it's Justin Benton and Sean Johnstone at the forefront of that charge. Fastest time of the session thus far, 2:02.490. And while we are here in the land down under, don't think that the conditions are going to get any less extreme than what we saw back in Europe. While we may be skipping up on wet weather conditions, we are not skipping up on absolutely brutal trackside conditions. It is 36 degrees on track surface alone. That's an ambient temperature of 28 degrees Celsius. It is searing heat here, and bear in mind, by Australian standards, so I'm told, that's a little bit more on the breezier side. So it is still one of the hottest set of conditions we've seen this season. Heading in towards round 5 then, drivers will definitely see, even over the short span of time they'll have during the race, only 20 minutes of racing time per session, they'll still see quite heavy degradation on those Pirellis over the course of this race. As it stands then, past the last 10 minutes of free practice left to go, Johnstone leads, Benton second, Smith third. We see Smith down towards the line here. Could there yet be an improvement? Not this time around, but there was in the question for Justin Benton. Still second in the session, but having improved by nearly 0.2 of a second in that last lap just gone. That puts an even greater wedge on Smith, and by proxy on that second row, Simone Loperfido with Ferrari, the one possible challenger to Ford-led dominance here in round 5. Currently tucked up behind then, that appears to be the triple 3 as it stands. That's Nick Collins making his way down towards the chase. Still yet to put a time on the charts here. And as we stay on with these two, looking further down the line, Loperfido 4th, O'Donnell 5th. We see Loperfido peeling away. Again, held up at the chase. Not the first time for the 44 today. We've seen the 44 struggling to put more times in on the charts due to traffic, so this could definitely emphasize getting out of the pits as early as possible for the 44 in the first of 2 qualifyings coming up just around the corner today. So further down the line, O'Donnell 5th, DiCaprio 6th, Cotello 7th, Smith, that being, looking at it here, the number 96, as opposed to Eric Smith we see here with Mercedes AMG. This is Simon Smith, currently 8th place, and you can see right alongside him there, the number 11, Sebastian Vogt, in 9th place. Tom Barlow makes 10th place at the moment. Across the line he goes, very close to a chance at overtaking Vogt in the timing charts for 9th place. Daniel Richards in 11th, Liad Steinfeld in 12th. We see here Gnesato in 13th, Coppola 14th, Wells 15th. A reluctant performance by Nissan. Now, we saw things to be a little bit more spry back in the European theatre. It seems now in their time away from the last round we saw in Europe in France before we made the move across to the United States. Wells has had a bit of trouble with that Nissan. Still a very temperamental platform. We've seen, though, he knows what to do roughly with this machine, but this is a track designed to kill any and all ambition, really. It's really a case of who dares wins. Is what gives anyone the chance of victory here in Bathurst. Further behind him then, Armando Davoli, now 16th for the session. I believe there was just a disconnect there because Wells was 16th momentarily. We also see Free Chile currently rounds out the available times in this session. Still yet to see anything from Mellon Vincent, Nick Collins, Roland, Dan Rick, Jose Brito, or by that metric as well from the number 32 of Brown. Things are looking very peachy here for Sean Johnstone. Taking a look back into those race wins, he's still yet to see one in the pro category over the course of this season so far, but he's looking geared up to take his first here in Season 5. And at round 5, no less, just into the second half of the championship. More rounds on the way. Taking a look into the calendar for Season 5. Now, we also have a calendar we'll bring up in a moment's time of the rounds we're covering. The next time you'll be seeing us is towards the penultimate and final rounds of Season 5. But before that, you'll be heading over to round 6 of the championship after today at the second and last endurance race of the season at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That's on March 10th. Taking a look into our side of things, though, if you're concerned for where TRTN may next appear for coverage of this championship, you'll be seeing us next on the 17th of March. That'll be in Barcelona. Then we head to Valencia for the final round on the 24th to see out what has been so far a fantastic opportunity to cover such a great championship. .92 nearest to the line we just saw there from the 99, though. Big hit against the wall. A lot of drivers rubbing the rear right out through Forest's elbow. Easy to catch yourself out in that section of the track. We saw across the line was the 92. It was Mellon Vincent to start a flying lap as it stands 19th in the session thus far. You see from the 99 coming down towards the line. In front of him is Eric Smith. We'll see if there is an improvement to be found in that last lap from Smith. We can see with damage, though, over that 555, it's unlikely. So we'll see for the 99 here. Even with that bump on the exit of Forest's elbow, things were looking relatively spry here for Johnstone. He still holds on to the fastest lap so far, and as he crosses the line of 2:02.490 to beat, sadly couldn't find any dice over that over the course of that last run. From behind him, the 24 approaches the line, so we'll see if we can catch on board with Jose Brito. Down to the line he goes from the bronze category, 16th fastest there as he crosses the line. You see there Eric Smith emerging from behind. We also saw just recently across the line into 6th fastest Emmanuel Coppola now ahead of Antonio DiCaprio. The two having emigrated from Ford over to Porsche. Does make for a very interesting move past the halfway mark of the championship. Nearest to the line currently on a valid flying lap appears to be the 44. So we go to catch on board with Simone Lopafido just on the exit of Murray's across the line. Fastest by 0.2 of a second. Just actually over a quarter of a second. Ferrari goes up and ahead of Ford here in free practice. This does lay in a very interesting precedent to follow coming up just around the corner into quali 1 of 2 today. Lopafido fastest by 253 thousandths over Sean Johnstone. Bear in mind, 3 minutes left to go in free practice. That could still change in this time. Next on a valid flying lap, so it appears to the line at the moment, the 182 of Roland. We see, though, with heavy damage over that Porsche, it's unlikely to be an improvement. Across the line a moment ago went the 92, and I believe following on its trails there, the number 45. So the 92 and the 45 looking there. That would have been Mellon Vincent. Now onto the timing charts, 15th fastest, and the 45 following on its trails there would have been Armando Davoli. Nearest to the line, the 555. We saw Eric Smith not too long ago, and the last time we saw him, he had damage. Then we saw him emerge from the pit lane, so you can see this is squeaky clean now for the 555. He's onto another flying lap, currently on his out lap here with the Ford. Now stray from that leading time by just over a second. We'll see what he can do, though, in the closing moments of free practice. From behind him, Eduardo Odoni in the 656. Rodoni, this is definitely quite an interesting case for him. Surrounded on all sides by pros, yet he competes in the open category. We've seen so far, yet to have seen anything in his very short tenure in Season 5, short of a podium. The race win on debut, 2 second place finishes in category over at the Circuit of the Americas. We'll see, though, now away from the American theatre, what he can do here in Australia. This is a track that takes absolutely no prisoners. Number 23 nearest to the line, Tom Barlow from 11th. Does he go faster than Sebastian Vogt across the line? Not this time around. You can see those two still incredibly close to one another as it stands. About 128 thousandths withstand between 10th and 11th place on this grid so far. You see, as it stands as well, an even closer gap, 90 thousandths. That's 9 hundredths between DiCaprio and Catello. Speaking of DiCaprio, we'll just quickly stay on board with him here. Up in front, the number 45. We saw from earlier, that was Armando Davoli. We'll see from 18th on the field if Davoli improves up past Brito. Doesn't appear to be the case for DiCaprio across the line, though, from 7th. Do we see an improvement up past Coppola? Not this time around. The driver's starting to plateau here for lap times towards the trailing end of free practice. As we see track conditions get hotter and hotter. Very little chances of things getting cooler over the course of the session at large. And as I say that, we will be seeing, as it stands there, towards the end of today, actually towards the run of qualifying as it stands, as it does enter the evening time, at 11 a.m. for the first race. So conditions may get a little bit cooler then in retrospect, but still do expect there to be tremendous amounts of heat at play here. We just see narrowly avoiding the wall was DiCaprio, scraping past on his run through Quarry, giving it absolutely everything in the trailing end here of free practice. Bumps the wall, out through Solman, into McPhillamy, down towards Brock Skyline. We see him absolutely leap for it down through Skyline. We see there, caught by the backside and a huge slam in the wall. That may very well have just one-upped the impact we saw earlier from the number 11 of Sebastian Vogt's McLaren. And that was a huge, huge hit there for Antonio DiCaprio right at the very end of free practice. As it stands then, Simone Lopafido fastest, and as we see an extension over his fastest by now half a second, begs the necessity for this. Well, nonetheless, 8 minutes of qualifying underway. It does leave a very confusing sentiment, and I'm sure in the case of Simone Lopafido, who took pole position not long ago, what exactly was the purpose behind all of that then? He's not going to be particularly happy knowing that he had pole position by such a clear and away margin. 1.2 seconds as he held over Sean Johnstone. Now he's got to do that all over again in even less time, and you can see a busy grid to kick things back off. Leading that charge once again, Sean Johnstone. You saw in the background there, that was huge trouble by the looks of it for Eduardo Odoni out through turn 2. We saw the start of that incident kick off for him out through turn 2. So if you're watching this over on YouTube, you'll note that the qualifying sessions don't necessarily match up to the session itinerary. Now, while the explanation for that is after the 10-minute qualifying we saw earlier on the live stream, the server underwent a reset and has now had to reset vice versa the qualifying sessions, now having shortened them down from 10 minutes to currently the scope of 2 8-minute sessions. So you'll be curious as to know why that is. That's why. So as you see here then with Johnstone, he'll be yet again the baseline for qualifying, this time in the rerun, with even less time to play for here. Now by the time he gets to the end of this, we'll be halfway through the qualifying session. This next lap coming, going to have to be absolutely vital then for Sean Johnstone. We're back on board with the Mustang. A rocky start to things, I must say. They're out through Murray's, was bouncing up over the curve, just taking a little bit of some grass with him on the right-hand side before he makes his way in through at turn 1. You see them for Johnstone. Things a little bit more rough around the edges. Brushes with the wall of death there, just out through Solman into McPhillamy Park we go. In the 99. In the background there, another Porsche in jeopardy. This time, that was Antonio DiCaprio. We just see him rejoining there down through the S's and the Dipper as we make our way to Forest's Elbow on board with a 99, set to be the baseline time here in qualifying on a reduced time session due to technical difficulties earlier on in the session. Down the Conrod straight we go. Down through to the chase then. As mentioned there, 4 minutes left to go in the session, so we're halfway through these reduced time qualifying sessions with Johnstone down towards the line. What's going to be the baseline time here at 2:03.215? That does leave him vulnerable from an advance from behind. Nearest to the line, the 260, Joel Cotello. Then riding on his trails there, the number 12, Justin Benton. Could Benton go fastest? Yes, he does by 0.08 of a second over the 99. Nearest to the line, the number 7. So let's catch on board here. Will Taylor. Down across the line we go. One of 3 Ferraris to share this appearance here. The other 2 being Tom Barlow and Simone Lopafido. Speaking of, now fastest by 1.6 seconds at 2:01.5 dead from the 44 as he crosses the line. 3.5 minutes left to go. 33 and 2:51 coming to the line. So we're about to see across the line here. This is Castle in the Sky Tempesta Racing McLaren. Across the line he goes. Sadly doesn't put a time on the charts for the 2:51 behind him. That story is not shared. Francesco Canasato into 9th. Also see among the drivers making their way to the line, we saw Eduardo Odoni, now 4th. So So in the scope of what has been a very hectic rerun of qualifying, we've seen here things be shaken up with Benton faster than Johnstone. O'Doney now into the top 5 proper, made his way just towards the back of it in the last run, but sadly you'll not be able to see on the replays for this live stream unless you're watching it as the archived VOD on Twitch. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, that means that the VOD is no longer available. O'Doney, though, 4th fastest as it stands. Not too far away, about half a second, actually, from Johnstone in 3rd. Speaking of, he's on his way down through to the chase, I should say. Behind him is the number 92, as it appears. Mellon Vincent. 2 minutes left to go then, so on to the last lap then for the 99. Across the line, needs 1.715 seconds to retake pole. He does get second, but is still spare of pole by 625 thousandths. Just over half a second. 6/10, 205 thousandths exactly. Number 12 across the line, Justin Benton looking for rebuttal, but still finds himself spare of the fastest time there by 1.635 seconds. He's off of Johnstone by just over a full second there. A second and 100th. To be exact. The 44 across the line. Lopfafido still leading this session. Can't find an improvement yet over a 201.5. We'll see if he can find it in the next lap gone. We see Scott Brown now 5th fastest. This is a fantastic turnaround for Lamborghini in these reduced qualifying times. 251 nearest to the line. Francesco Canesato 11th. We saw, though, more recently was an exchange between Benton and O'Doney. That was previously to put O'Doney in 3rd, but now we see Eric Smith takes up the helm of 3rd place. Further behind them, Tom Barlow in the open category catches up to his rival, Eduardo O'Doney. Those two 4th and 6th respectively. So this is shaping up to be a very bizarre grid. We saw off in the background there, just having finished his last lap of this qualifying session, is Emmanuel Coppola, 9th fastest, ahead of Sebastian Vogt as he crosses the line. We'll see if there's yet an improvement to be found here for the 11. He's got enough time, though, for one more flying lap. Cross the line, DiCaprio, 6th fastest. Number 8 and number 1 to the line, Liad Steinfeld and Tom Wells. Tom Wells, 11th fastest, with one more lap to play with. We see pulling to the side there is Liad Steinfeld. Back into the pits he goes. The number 2, nearest to the line, Free Chili, on his way down towards Murray's. Right at the very end of qualifying, so he's beaten by the bell. We'll see what time he puts in, as it seems to be no time at the current running of things. Across the line he goes. Does he put a time on the charts from 23rd? That appears to be not the case. The starts at plumb last of the field. It's going to be a curious challenge for him over the course of race 1 today. Nearest to the line, the number 12, Justin Benson. We saw him briefly up towards the fastest time earlier on in the session. He finishes this reduced time qualifying session in 5th. Pangs of frustration, self-evident on the number 12. Number 44, nearest to the line. Can it be an improvement from a 201.5? Yes, it can. A 201.080. We were dangerously close to a 2-0. The high 2-0s at the end of the session. Across the line, the number 96. We see for Simon Smith, across the line there, what appears to be 12th. I believe it said 13th for a moment, but we have had disconnect on the field a few times over the course of today's session. Francesco Canesato down to the line from 16th, goes 14th at the end of today's qualifying session. The 555, Eric Smith, can he go 2nd fastest? Not this time around. Still clear, though, of Eduardo O'Doney at this time. As I say that, though, O'Doney is down towards the line, as you can see here. Dangerously close to an improvement to 3rd. Does he find it? Not this time around. You can see rather evidently as to why that's the case. Heavy damage on the front of the Porsche. Number 24, nearest to the line, Jose Brito. A driver who's taken wins before in category, down in the bronze, as a matter of fact. He and Dan Rick have shared in many a victory over the course of this season so far. He crosses the line 21st in the session. 92, the number 7, and the number 1 behind him. 92, Mellon Vincent, sadly no time on the charts. Number 7, Will Taylor from 19th across the line. Also couldn't find anything that time around. Can Tom Wells? No, as he makes his way to the pit lane. So tantalizingly closer to an opportunity of 10th place there. You can see the separate gap, 15 thousandths between himself and Emmanuel Coppola. Nearest to the line then, or what looks to be the last time of qualifying today, is Free Chili once again. Down towards Murray's he goes. Currently plumb last in the session, though I see no checkered flag next to him. Across the line he goes. And there we do see a change in fate. He looks to have got up ahead of Vincent, Rick, and Roland, but I believe those drivers ended up disconnecting. So, no, as a matter of fact. In the case of two of them, at least, we do see Dan Rick on this finishing result appears to have not rejoined the session, but we have Melon, Vincent, and Roland in the 92 and 182. So, to reiterate on some previous points, now as we see the end of this reduced time qualifying, we will bring back up the topic of the news again for the sake of the rerun. We see, though, much in the same vein as we saw last qualifying before that was sadly brought to a halt, is once again pole position by even shorter in a margin. It was 1.2 seconds in the last run of qualifying. Sadly, that's not going to air. As we see here, this reduced time qualifying still gave us over a second in the case of Lopafido v Johnstone here at round 5. Taking a look at that grid then, we're going to look through the grid and then into the scope of the news before the formation lap today. As you can see now, no issues with pit stops. For those tuning in on live will know exactly what it is I'm talking about. And now as we take a look at this grid, Lopafido on pole, Sean Johnstone in second with Eric Smith third and Eduardo Odoni in fourth place. Justin Benton rounds out the top 5, starts along the third row alongside Antonio DiCaprio in 6th. Tom Barlow 7th alongside Daniel Richards in 8th place. As we see there, Scott Brown 9th and Emmanuel Coppola in 10th place. Then further down the line, Wells in 11th. We see here Simon Smith in 12th place alongside Sebastian Vogt in 13th, and on the 7th row at the back there 14th for Francesco Ganassato in the 251 BMW. Liad Steinfeld in 15th place with Joel Cotello 16th. We see Castle, Collins and Taylor 17th through 19th, and Davoli rounds out the top 20. Jose Brito 21st with Free Chili in 22nd, Melon Vincent 23rd and Roland in 24th. Back up at the front of the field then with 2 minutes 20 seconds left to go to take a look at the article of news for today. Came across our desk from the world of the World Rally Championship. Toyota's new 2027 car has been spotted testing in Portugal. A radical redesign of the regulation format we've come to know over the last couple of years as Rally 1. That is set for massive reforms next year in the upcoming WRC 27 regs. And we see here for Toyota, they're ditching the GR Yaris, a legendary Rally 1, for a brand new platform seemingly from parts unknown. Toyota does not sell a car in this shape, so it's left many speculating, are we about to see the return of the coveted Toyota Celica, a car that was a powerhouse unit, rather controversially, in the Group A world back in the 1990s with the Celica ST185 and ST205. As we see as well, it uses the same rear aero from another Toyota project, the Corolla RC2, introduced for use in the American Rally Association Championships for 2026. So this is a curious case here for Toyota, ditching what has been years of hatchback-led design for a coupe. At the moment, it became an opportunity. We're curious to see then what things are going to look like for the two other major manufacturers for 2027's grid, that being Ford and Hyundai, as we've also seen the upcoming privateer team Project Rally 1 debut their car and looks to be a sort of a hybrid of sorts, a mixture between the shape of a Porsche Macan and the front end of a Skoda Fabia, and that owes to the fact that it uses the same underpinnings as the Fabia Rally 2. For Toyota, could they be using parts from the GR Yaris Rally 2 to reinforce this bizarre new Rally 1 project? Well, we'll come to know that by the end of the year, but this is looking to be a very exciting season next year for the World Rally Championships.
30 seconds.
30-second warning then for the formation lap, and Simone Lopafido stands upon pole position. We'll stay on board with the 44 for the formation lap here in what is set to be race 1 of 2 here in Bathurst. 20 minutes of racing to follow. And from the front lines then, Ferrari and Ford, two legendary manufacturers, go head-to-head here in the land down under. On board then with Lopafido. Bear in mind for Lopafido, riding high on the successes out of the trailing end of round 4. The Circuit of the Americas gave him a race win in category in race 2 of round 4. Let's see what he can make of things today then on a broadly different track from the rather wide confines of the home of the United States Grand Prix over in Austin. As we take a look at things here in the home of the Bathurst 1000 here in New South Wales. Starting right up alongside him then, things are going to be rather hectic when you consider the angle of what is set to attack for his first possible chances of a race win in the pro category. It's Sean Johnstone in the 99, right alongside him his fellow forward Eric Smith. Then just behind him will be starting running in the same line actually as the leading number 44. It's going to be that of Justin Benton. Sandwiched in between all of them though, a car definitely quite far from home here. The Porsche 911 992 of Eduardo Odoni up in the open category. Do see a little bit of lag though here for the 656. That could be trouble for him over the course of today's race. Tom Barlow, another open category driver, currently the championship leader, starts down in 7th as it stands there. In the number 23, he'll be chasing down that 656 for a division win in today's race. You see here, this is Daniel Richards with Ford competing in the silver category as it stands. Looks to be on a division pole position right now. Nearest driver, Simon Smith in the Mercedes, down in what appears to be the scope of 12th place there in the 96. So for the 450, things are rather breezy category-wise, but he's definitely going to look to sink his teeth into competition around him for a chance at a top 5 finish outright. We'll have to wait and see exactly how that unfolds. We see towards the back of the top 10 here. Coppola, one of 2 drivers we saw to move away from Ford over to Porsche. A radical decision that could very well bite them quite literally on the backside on the run down this particular section of the track. The run down through Brock's Skyline we've seen has already kicked up the backs of plenty of Porsches in free practice and qualifying today. Could the race give us the very same fate these drivers have tried so desperately to avoid? Only time will tell. Oh, looking to catch back on board then with the leading Ferrari then. As we glance around to see, there's Simone Lopafido, the 2 Fords gathering at his rear, getting ready to challenge for an early lead of this race. Bear in mind, this is Ford's town when it comes to straight line speed. The Conrod and Mountain Straights will be hunting grounds for the 7th gen Mustangs over everything that stands around them. If it's Porsches, if it's Ferraris, so long as it doesn't have a blue oval on the front, neither back, it's a target for these drivers today. And that's not to consider that they won't be fighting each other before they get the opportunity. Plenty of things to consider then here in Bathurst. Down then the Conrod straight to the chase here. This is set to be a heavy action spot over the course of the race. If we don't see heavy action before here, we're likely to see it over towards Brock's Skyline on the exit of Solman and McPhillamy up in Sector 2. This heavy braking zone, it's really a game of who dares wins, and those Porsches will see great advantage over the competition around them, but that's on the grounds that they can keep up and handle the heat. Let's see how it all unfolds then. 20 minutes of racing set to follow. We begin the formation process. 12 cars in all then. Not 12 cars, I was going to say 12 cars either side, but as we see that it's now dropped down to 11 one side, 12 on the other, to make 23 cars in all on this grid. Was previously set to be 24. On the run down towards the line then. Let's see how it all unfolds. I believe coming into the pits there, is that Tom Barlow? No, that's Will Taylor down to the line. A very bizarre start then for Will Taylor. Let's see how it all unfolds for the rest of the field, as it's 22 cars on the field, 1 from the pit lane for race 1 of 2 here in round 5 of season 5 of the TRC Sprint Cup EU. Down to the line we go. We're green and racing here in Bathurst. A great start by Johnstone, immediately trying to get up and alongside Lopafido on the run down towards turn 1. Almost immediately then, action on the front row. Contact between Johnstone and Lopafido. They take each other out, and as it looks there, Eric Smith moves into the lead. Get a look at this on the replays as action continues to spill down the order. We can see down the line, huge calamity on the mountain straight. On the race start, we can see as we get down towards turn 2, cars are flying here in Bathurst. It has all gone nuclear for Sean Johnstone and Simone Lopafido. You have never seen blood as bad as this in GT3 racing. Mark my words. This has been one of the most disastrous starts I believe these drivers may very well have ever seen. And I am at a loss for words there. What saw otherwise looked to be a competitive race start has fallen apart at the seams into what is no doubt going to be the most controversial moment of this championship. Wires frayed here, 2 heirs to the throne, both of which spilling blood down the run of the mountain straight. It is disaster, but taking the lead of said disaster is Eric Smith. Several drivers in the pit lane, among them the 44, the man who started upon pole position. There will be words in the paddock, not many of which I'm of liberty to divulge on air. Not many of which friendly for family viewing. Down the Conrod straight then. It's 2 Fords at the forefront of the field, but not 2 Fords that were expected to be up so early, that being Smith and Benton. O'Donnell to third. We see in the background there another Porsche taking the helm of the second row. That's Antonio DiCaprio. Those two 0.3 of a second apart as yellow flags continue to fly all around the track. It has been a brutal and bloodied conquest. A driver who has seen great advantage, though, I must say, in and amongst the chaos created in lap 1 has been Tom Wells. So you see there, he moved up from just outside the top 10 into 5th place. It has been an exuberant start by Nissan. Bear in mind, dealing with great balance of performance today, they could see a great chance of a podium in division, if not outright. We can see just in front of him there, his main 2 targets are 2 Porsches right up over his nose, that being Antonio DiCaprio in the 994 and Eduardo O'Donnell in the 656. They're up through the mountain straight. This could very likely become Three's company shortly. We see side-by-side action heading up through to Griffin's Bend if the cameras do feel the need to track it. We see still holding his ground, Antonio DiCaprio. We see up at the front, this is a battle for the race lead between Smith and Benton. This is definitely one of the most bizarre starts I think I've ever seen in my time as a commentator. Taking a look then in with Justin Benton. You can see it's properly elbows out on the top 3 rows of the field so far. Chasing then Eric Smith for a chance of the race lead. And what has been wires frayed here in the opening 4 minutes. Down through the dipper then into the S's. You can see that almost a bit of a slip angle emerging there on the 555. He's into the wall, though. So too is Benton. Both of them rebounding off the wall of Forest. Making their way out through turn 19. The number 12 moves up into the lead of this race. After the 555 knocks the wall, the number 12 didn't get much a cleaner exit, but it was just enough to put him in this position to fight. Down the Conrod, Justin Benton leads in pro, down through to the chase. These two fighting upon the ashes of that race start. And don't think that things have gotten any more amicable in the absence of the former race-leading pair. You see in the background then, Eduardo O'Donnell cutting loose of Antonio DiCaprio. Those two 7/10 apart on the way through Murray's. You see behind them is the white and orange Nissan of Tom Wells. So you still see here with Benton v Smith. Emerging from the pits, Emmanuel Coppola. In the number 66, they're down in 18th place, emerges from the wreckages of that opening lap disaster. Now, what we had on the instant replays was only the start of what later became absolutely brazen incidents there on the run down the mountain straight between the leading pair. I'm at a loss for words, frankly, as to what that situation may very well entail. But it ain't looking grand if you ask me. For these two, though, it's payday. This is the first of possibly many opportunities they'll have down the line in the fallout of that incident to take the lead of this championship. And moreover, they took the helm of this race by storm. Bear in mind, one of 2 races today, already 5 minutes in. Benton opens up the taps on his lead against Eric Smith. Caught up behind Emmanuel Coppola down through McPhillamy, riding in the dirty air of that Porsche. Things could get ugly here, riding up with traffic down through Skyline. We'll stay on board with the number 12, but cutting around the field to see what the rest of the grid might be up to. We see that ongoing battle on the second row, much similar to what we've seen of the 2 Fords. We see 2 Porsches head-to-head, Eduardo O'Donnell versus Antonio DiCaprio for 3rd place. Tom Wells now fighting with Scott Brown, Lamborghini versus Nissan in a bizarre matchup for 5th. Simon Smith fighting with Sean Johnstone for 7th place there. We see Johnstone heavy damages on the 99 after that flurry of incidents down the mountain straight. He's re-emerged into the field here, hunting down his chances at 7th, but his main rival now emerges in that large green 96 up over his nose. That Mercedes is a tough one to fight with. It can really use its size to its advantage. Down through the chase, though. Johnstone fancies his chances. Might have to back out of things here. Smith got him under the brakes. Further down the line, Francesco Gnassato, 9th place with Free Chili up to 10th. This has been a sizable turnaround. We talked about sizable turnarounds in the favour of Tom Wells. We see here for Free Chili, he's cut well over half the field up over his nose there. Now to 10th in the number 2. Now this is quite something. Behind him, Joel Cotello. A far cry of where he'd like to be. He was at the forefront of silver. Now down in Division 2nd as it stands, but 11th on the grid outright. Jose Brito in 12th. You see here for Nick Collins, 13th. Will Taylor, 14th. He started, bear in mind, got probably the best run of things here because he started in the pit lane. He ran into the pits. Maybe he knew something we didn't. And he emerged onto a war zone on the run up through the mountain straight. Very bizarre stuff from the number 7. He's 14th. Roland in 15th. Vincent 16th. Coppola 17th. We see there in the pit lane some of the casualties of that opening lap flurry. Among them, Richards, Lopafido, Barlow, and Steinfeld. We're going to catch on board with these two here. DiCaprio versus Odoni as things are hotting up in that fight for 3rd. Sadly, our graphics still show DiCaprio as having raced with Ford. As you can tell, anything but here. Further behind, it is worth pointing out that ongoing fight here for 5th place. Just taking a look on board here with Tom Wells. Down the Conrod we go. Tom Wells in the number 1 Nissan. Currently fighting then with Scott Brown. Yellow flags out for the 96 in trouble down through Skyline. We take a look away from these two just briefly. Having a look up in front there as we see Eduardo Odoni side by side with Antonio DiCaprio. Before we get the look at what happened for the 96, that was for Simon Smith. You can see broadly different state of affairs this time around. Heavy damage on the Mercedes as now he drops in behind Roland in the number 182. Down to 15th goes the Mercedes. Looking up here, DiCaprio versus Odoni has picked up where it left off, as we see here side-by-side action with these two for the fight of 3rd. Going high and around the outside, the number 994, but does he clip the walls down through Griffin's Bend? No, but he does tuck back in behind the 656. Things are incredibly close here between Odoni and DiCaprio. Behind them, Scott Brown versus Tom Wells. Still one to watch here. The 32 chasing the number 1 for 5th place. In such a bizarre matchup that you can't take your eyes off of it. Bear in mind, the Nissan GTR, albeit a few generations ago, used to dominate here in Bathurst in the Group A era of the Australian Touring Car Championship. It's often credited to where it earned its name, the Godzilla. As we see here, 3 generations later, with the R35 model still doing damage on this track. Getting a quick gander up here with DiCaprio v Odoni as we see things get a little bit sketchy on the exit of the Forest Elbow into turn 19. In the slipstream at the moment. We look back in with that fight going on for currently 4th place. We see, as we cut just on there with Nick Collins. A slide out through Reed, now through McPhillamy. He seems to be doing all right there, but nothing too critical. We see from DiCaprio's point of view in that fight for 3rd. In the background, you see Wells now having cut decent distance up ahead of Scott Brown's Lamborghini. Halfway through the race then, things have definitely been a day to forget for some, but for these drivers, they're on cloud 9 here, hunting each other down for a great opportunity to fight for a podium. Odoni looking at a division win in the Opens, but it'll be looking at an outright podium, which is also a fantastic accolade for the Porsche. This is dreadful news then for Tom Barlow. Bear in mind, he was at at least somewhat risk of losing out in the open category. Now those chances have definitely become reality for Odoni to take the lead, albeit not maybe in this race alone, but if things like this continue to stack up in rather unfortunate fashion for the 23, the 656 may find its opportunities quite plentiful on the run into the next couple of rounds then across the Nürburgring and then both Spanish rounds in Barcelona and Valencia. We'll be covering the 2 Spanish rounds, round 7 and round 8, later on in the month. You see here, though, absolutely captivated by this fight for third place. Eduardo Odoni in the 656 versus Antonio DiCaprio in the number 994. They're down through Brock's skyline. Behind them, it's worth noting the gap getting closer and closer between the 2 cars fighting for 5th on that 3rd row behind them, Tom Wells and Scott Brown. We saw actually crossing up there past the number 66. Can we get that on the replays there? That was Coppola. What on earth happened there for Emmanuel Coppola? It was down past the dipper, I believe, there. We saw a little bit of smoke on the right, and now he's just obscured by the mound there, but I believe what's gone and happened for him, he's had trouble down at the dipper and he's rolled off to the right-hand side of the track. We saw that tiny little plume of smoke to give us any indication. We see here for these two fighting down through the chase. Meanwhile, the 333, I believe that's Nick Collins, to have brought out the yellow flag. That's down through Solomon and McPhillamy, past the wall of death there. Another Porsche caught out by troubles here in Bathurst. These two now definitely biting their tongue in this situation, seeing that the Porsches around them are starting to flag with less time on those tyres. These two have been thrashing each other for control of third. Will they mate the very same fate in 7 minutes' time? So far, so good for these two, the 994 and the 656, but it's worth noting Tom Wells is slowly but surely catching up in the Nissan. Now, in the straightaways, the Nissan has got the Porsches beat, but in maneuverability, it finds itself often playing second fiddle in that competition. As it stands then, with just under 7 minutes left to go, taking a look at the grid once more, Justin Benton leads with the fastest lap. This could very well be Benton's chance of his first win in this season. The number 12 on flying form here amidst the chaos of an opening lap like that. I really don't think we're going to get anything quite like that again this season. I've seen some rough starting laps in races before and a few different championships, but I don't think I've seen anything get quite that extreme. I think maybe most recent recollection of an opening lap like that would have been back in the start of the British leg of the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series over on Competizione Performance League. Those who watched in saw in the first of those 2 races just how nuclear things got down through Paddock Hill Bend at Brands Hatch. But this is something else entirely. And what it has given rise to, though, is Benton's opportunity for flying form to the line. 6 minutes, 3 laps to play with then before he is crowned, I should say, a race winner. That's all he has to do now. No other targets necessary. Survive at all costs then for the race win. Eric Smith will be preying upon incidents ahead for the number 12. In the background, Odoni still defends away from third place, looking at an open category win ahead of Antonio DiCaprio in 4th. Tom Wells closing distance. We see in the background now being hunted down for position by Sean Johnstone is Scott Brown. Johnstone up the inside. They go side by side through Murray's. The Lamborghini cuts it around the outside and stays ahead, leveraging better momentum on turn 23. Let's go and catch on board with these two. This is set to be an exciting follow-up to some of the fighting we saw from earlier. We see more trouble for Nick Collins at the same spot he was found at last time, having trouble. Let's go and take a look on board, though, with the Mustang of Sean Johnstone. Side by side, then, with Scott Brown on the run down the mountain straight. Or up the mountain straight, I suppose, more relevantly. Tucks a little bit onto the grass there after a bit of a rub between himself and the Lamborghini. Now, if he wasn't seeing red before, I guarantee you this much, the 99 is seeing red now. The thing is, he's got to manage himself here. He can't let pressure get to the better of him. That is how you end up making an easy mistake. We see for the Lamborghini, something doesn't appear to be 100% there for Scott Brown. That 32... yes, you can see it is stepping out. Is that a puncture by some chance there for the Lamborghini? You can see every corner. It's hitting slip angle like an old school GT, like an old Ford GT40. But that's very uncharacteristic of a modern day Lamborghini. Does beg the question, what's going on then for him? We see here from Sean Johnstone's point of view, things could get very, very interesting then. This is the fight for 6th. Up in front, the 656 and the 994 still clash heads. We see them just up the road on the run out of turn 19. Just off in the distance there. Those two chasing each other rather ironically down towards the chase. We see here for O'Donnell versus DiCaprio. This is in for 3rd. DiCaprio looking at the lunge. Does he make it in towards turn 21 and 22? Yes, he does. What a leap by Antonio DiCaprio. Bear in mind, rounding onto his penultimate lap here. 2 more to play with, and the 994 moves into 3rd. Wing and a prayer then for DiCaprio up to 3rd. O'Donnell down to 4th. Wells still closing ground. We see, though, much by the same gap we saw the last time, and the time since Johnstone intercepted that of Scott Brown, who now moves down to 7th. Now, this is the real doomsday scenario a lot of these drivers have been fearing. Sean Johnstone was part of that major incident from the start of this race, and now he's back into it, hunting down a top 5 in race 1 of 2. The 99 now sizes up his chances over Tom Wells in the number 1. We see, though, continued troubles down at Griffin's Bend. This could invite in an opportunity by Scott Brown to have some kind of retaliation in mind for 6th place. The 99 later onto the brakes to tuck in at the cuttings here in through Quarry. And this is just the fantastic part about Bathurst. You can never anticipate where the action may come from next. It is just that kind of circuit. I'd say it's what easily makes it one of the best, if not the best circuit in this game. I hold that with full chest, and when I say that, it is one of the best circuits going. And I'm sure that's a bit of a lukewarm opinion. I don't think many people are going to challenge you on that one. The 92 ran into some trouble earlier on. That was for Mellon Vincent. We see making his way up the mountain straight at this time. The 96 not too far behind him. We see there. Is there any damage for the 92? Doesn't appear to be the case there on his way in through to turn 2. We'll catch on with him later on. We see chances of a counter-attack start to dwindle for Scott Brown as caught out in the straightaways here. That Mustang is just gone. That V10 can't hold up against the V8. You see there, big slide by Brown. He manages to save it. That could have ended in disaster for him here. I think he's just got to salvage his odds. He'll be looking at Division 6th because of the presence of Eduardo O'Donnell in that top 7. He'll be finishing in his own category up in the Opens there. In terms of the other Opens, I mean, looking farther down the field just to have a gander at to who could be winning in the Opens in this race here, because obviously they have their placards mixed up with the bronzes as well. I believe having a look at it here might very well be, I think it might be Free Chili. I'll have to double check on that one. It could even be Free Chili or Gnasato, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, it is Gnasato. So yeah, Francesco Gnasato looking at a division podium as we cross into that final lap. Not far then from the chances of crowning Justin Benton his first ever race win in this season, up in the pro category amidst what has been a very controversial race here in Bathurst, make no mistake of it. But he has fought diligently amongst the wreckages of that brutal lap 1 incident to find himself atop the charts today. And from the word go, he needed no more hand-holding to secure this win. He emerged from the ashes then, like the story of the Phoenix. And down through to the chase he goes. He's right onto the trails here of his first ever race win here in Season 5. On the run out through the chase, down towards the line, we're on board with the Ford of Justin Benton. What has been a rather precarious start ends in glory for the number 12. Down towards the line then at the end of a very bizarre race 1. The checkered flag flies. Justin Benton wins in pro. A brilliant drive there by the number 12. A great fight between himself and Eric Smith, who finishes 2nd place. Still a great result for the 555. Benton victorious then for the first time in the pro category this season. DiCaprio down to the line then, as it seems has fallen in well behind Odoni, who finishes in the victory for open category drivers, then third place at the end of today's race 1 of 2. DiCaprio fourth, Wells fifth, Johnstone in sixth, Brown seventh. You see Gnassato coming to the line, he'll be finishing in division second. On the subject of other divisions, however, I believe Jose Brito might be looking at the bronze win. We'll double check that one, as we're still relearning how all of the categories operate again, as it has been some time away from us. But yes, Jose Brito will be looking at another bronze win in the number 24. We'll get a full look at all division wins at the moment. We have confirmations on 2 categories then. Justin Benton in the pros and Eduardo Odoni in the opens. Down towards the line then, Gnassato division second, Free Chile division third. Jose Brito coming to the line then for the bronze category win. We see here with the Ferrari making his way down towards the line then, finishes in the top 10 amidst a very chaotic race today. Following on his trails, we see approaching the line is Simon Smith for the silver division win. Across the line then, Jose Brito wins in bronze, then taking a look behind him to that of the 96 of Simon Smith, who wins in the silver category. A very, very hectic race. And don't go anywhere. We still have one more race to play with later on today. What has been a very, very confusing day of racing so far. You see here with Nick Collins in the open category heading down towards the line. Meanwhile, Will Taylor 14th, Mellon Vincent 15th. You see there the full scope of results on what has been a bloodbath start to racing here in Bathurst. A very controversial race start that saw plenty of drivers DNF. You can see the tally of what has been warfare here in Bathurst play its toll on the grid. At the end of it, though, talking about division wins, Justin Benton takes his first ever Pro Division win here in round 5 of Season 5. In the open category win, it's Eduardo Odoni. In the number 656. In the bronze category, it's Jose Brito. And in the silver category, it's Simon Smith. Those are your race 1 winners today here in round 5. Bear in mind, taking a look back onto the session itinerary, we still have Quali 2 and Race 2. Now, do take into just quick discretion here. Those qualifying sessions have been reduced from 10 minutes to 8 as per technical difficulties earlier on. So do take that current shot with a bit of a grain of salt here. But the 20 minutes of racing is still set to follow at hand. So there's no compromise on that one. But we will have a shorter qualifying session as according to the itinerary we were given at the restart of this session. What it has given us, though, is brazen competition between the front runners there. That is a real flashpoint in their rivalry. And I'm sure this is a very bitter note for Simone Lopafido. This could definitely leave his position in this championship up in question, whether or not he continues to race with these drivers after what he's just been through today. Now, it started with quite a bit of argy-bargy looking back through the race start. But then things kicked off into just full-scale war. I have no clue how quite accurately to describe what it is we saw on the mountain straight on lap 1. It was definitely quite something spectacular, if you're a big fan of crashes. So then, on towards Quali 2.
Green light, show them what you got.
So qualifying 2 starts on a much quieter note. The grid, almost said the quid there, the grid, much more hesitant to get out. We saw it was all hands on deck for the restart, but this time around, reveling from what has been a very, very lukewarm feeling for many on that grid at the end of race 1. Things start off on a much more somber note. For one driver, though, Simone Lopafido, it's back to business for the 44. He had pole position in Quali 1. Can he do it again? Absolutely likely, but let's see what he can do this time around, fueled by the hatred from that first race incident. It's a dangerous thing to toy with. We'll see, though, what the 44 can do. We're on board then with Simone Lopafido.
This is just quickly worth noting there, hanging in the background there, over the rear wing of the 44. There's the 99 of Sean Johnstone. He was looking on tracks to possibly secure his first ever division win, was waylaid from that chances after that incident on lap 1 of race 1. The chances, though, pace-wise, are absolutely still there, but he's got to go toe-to-toe once again with the very same driver he clashed heads with back in race 1. So then onto the first flying laps from the number 44, Simone Loperfido, then followed by Sean Johnstone, then Justin Benson, last race's race winner in the pro category. So observing the aftermath of what has been a very bizarre state of affairs at the trailing end of race 1, just as we watch here with Simone Loperfido. Now, these reports are as yet unconfirmed, but believe we may very well have just seen word in the TRC server from Emmanuel Coppola retiring from the championship after this race. There's a pity as well with the fighting he had with DiCaprio for some time. Things got sour towards the end of that last race. You see them for Loperfido down towards the line. The baseline time of Quali 2 today, 201.785. Then we see Sean Johnstone to the line. 1.5 seconds off the mark there. Then the number 12 goes faster into second place. Now 1.072 seconds away from Loperfido. Nearest to the line, the number 450, Daniel Richards, making his way to the line with Ford. He's fourth place there, 2.6 seconds off. Nick Collins fifth. From behind him there, we see the arrival of Scott Brown, the number 5. Not number 5, sorry, number 32 is in fifth. My mistake there. That's the Lamborghini, fifth fastest. Now down to sixth with the introduction of Eric Smith, who finished second in the last race. A great drive from the 555 amidst the chaos of race 1. We see a large swarm of Fords there gathering behind Loperfido, and that's interrupted by the introduction of Antonio DiCaprio here with 3 minutes left to go. The 994 clashed heads with Emmanuel Coppola over the course of the race today. Actually, no, it wasn't Coppola. My mistake. It was with O'Donnell. We do see is the case that this was with immediate effect, that announcement by Emmanuel Coppola, because he does appear to be out now of the race to qualifying. So it's a bittersweet end for Coppola. It was a curious change in vehicle away from Ford over towards Porsche. Was this the gamble worth making? We're not sure, but this was quite the baptism of fire for this machine. And it's a pity that he's gone from the grid then, with hopes that we may see him again sometime soon. While that may not be the chance within this championship, we see how these drivers get around. We're likely to see them again someday. Oh my goodness, into the wall there. Oh, a ping pong there through McPhillamy. That was for Castle. The number 33, the Sky Tempesta McLaren, ping ponged against the walls. And that's down in the open category, if I'm not mistaken there. So that was who we were seeing on board with here. Was it actually one of the open category cars? No, this is a bronze category. This is Ryan Castle. in the 33 that had that huge incident from earlier on. Not great stuff there for McLaren. That could very well have just put Castle out of commission from challenging an 11th place start, or perhaps even 10th by the end of this session. Speaking of a top 10 start, Tom Wells goes 9th in the last lap just gone. Tucks in behind a driver he fought with inside of that top 5 earlier on in race 1, that being Scott Brown in 8th place, the number 32. Only up and ahead of Tom Wells by about 305 thousandths actually there between those two. Very close at hand for their qualifying endeavours. Benton in the pit lane, so holding things off at the end of this qualifying session, hoping that what he's done here has been enough to hold Sean Johnstone at bay. You can see the 99 though bouncing in towards Skyline, carrying a lot of momentum with him there. That's the gambit these Fords take on with them, charging down through to Sector 3, down through the S's in towards Forest's Elbow. Now this will be the last shot that Johnstone has in this qualifying session. So on his way out of turn 19 on the Conrad, can he challenge for the front row? Bear in mind, needs about just under 0.2 of a second to put himself in contention there, fighting with Justin Benton. Last round's, not last round, but last race's race winner in this round. Out through the chase then. What can Johnstone do here at the end of qualifying? Bear in mind, Lopafido still out on track and puts an improvement there. We finally see the high 2.0s. Across the line went Lopafido, and now second fastest, joining him on the front row, is Sean Johnstone, returning at the last stop there of qualifying. Bear in mind, there's still drivers out on track that could stand to challenge him on this one. Eric Smith among them. Down through to the chase. Finished second in the last race just gone. What can he make of this qualifying session this time around? Looks to, as it stands right now, start alongside Justin Benton. These two inherited the race lead off of the action on lap 1. Now be sizing to do it again if things continue to be as white knuckle between Johnson and Lopafido. Was an improvement by Smith, but not enough for position, but he can still revel in a very confident position to start from in the 555. Throws it to the side there. Satisfied so far with where he's put things at the end of qualifying. Nearest to the line, actually, as it stands, is the 994. And that was DiCaprio, 6th. Starts in behind O'Donnell in 5th. Number 23 now nearest to the line. Tom Barlow, one of the casualties of earlier on in race 1. Here from the open category, his opportunities to maintain control of that championship lead in division squandered through race 1. So now he's got his second wind opportunity here to fight with Eduardo O'Donnell. Down through turn 23 then. At the end of qualifying, currently 10th on the field, division second, puts it up to 8th. Pushes Wells down to 9th and Brown down to 10th. So puts himself closer to that of O'Donnell. Starts on just the row behind, facing towards, believe it there, he'll be facing towards the rear right quarter of that number 656, down through to turn 1. Now, obviously, in the previous break, we discussed the World Rally Championships. Newest developments from Toyota, sadly, with no other articles of news to discuss as of right now. There is the more pressing matters as well, that due to the ongoing rising conflict in the Middle East, the Qatar 1812 kilometers of the World Endurance Championship has been delayed until further notice. That is no longer set to be the opening round of the 2026 World Endurance Championship. It will now fall over to Imola to be the opening round later in April. There's no current recollection as to when it will return, but it is set for a second half of 2026 return at the bare minimum. We'll have more to update you on as things progress there, but it is a very volatile subject, so we will approach it with a great degree of caution. Well, looking at this grid, they'll be approaching this with a great degree of caution as well after the results of race 1. Simone Lopafido and Sean Johnstone on the front row again. And behind them, Justin Benton and Eric Smith. Behind them, Eduardo O'Donnell and Antonio DiCaprio, 5th and 6th, with Daniel Richards 7th, Tom Barlow in 8th, Tom Wells in 9th, and Scott Brown to round out the top 10. Will Taylor in 11th place, with Simon Smith in 12th, Francesco Gnassato in 13th, with Liad Steinfeld in 14th, Melon Vincent in 15th, with Jose Brito 16th, Nick Collins in 17th, and Ryan Castle in 18th place, Roland in 19th, and Fricelli in 20th. We see a significant reduction then of drivers. Started as 23 on track. Technically 22 on track one from the pit lane for race 1, but now we see things drop down to 20 after the results of race 1 today here in Bathurst. This is often the flashpoint of most drivers' careers. If they can't hack it here, that's often where they throw the towel in. And we saw that this has been the straw to break the camel's back on a few drivers today, and rightfully so after the disaster that was race 1's start today. Will history stand to repeat itself then here in Bathurst, or have these drivers learnt their mistakes? That is the real question, and we'll be watching between our fingers to see how things pan out between Lopafido and Johnstone on their second run around Hell Corner for the first time. And I say that in the sense, I know that sounded a bit odd, their second run around Hell Corner for the first lap. That makes more sense, haha. It's a long day, long day. We have more broadcasts coming up in about 5 hours with the folks over at Competizione Performance League in their opening round of Season 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. We spoke with their drivers at the end of Season 2, and there in which we learned of some big changes coming up into Season 3. More to talk about that, though, when we go live in a few hours over at Brands Hatch. Do catch us then at 1 AM Greenwich Mean Time on the 4th of March. That'll be around 9 PM Eastern Standard Time, if I'm not mistaken, there on the 3rd of March. So then, getting on towards that 30-second warning, we'll once again be following on board with Simone Lopafido, but it's worth taking a few perspectives around the field just to see some of the drivers that could absolutely tear up through the grid later on in this session. So the 30-second warning shown. Drivers will be instructed to fire their engines up. We just hear there the low grumble of the V6 of the number 44, and that's played in symphony from the baritone roar of the 99's V8 engine up and alongside him. Taking a look around that field, though, we see, of course, with Justin Benton was the Pro Division winner in the last race here in Bathurst, just gone. He'll be looking for double trouble here, starting right behind the leading pair. If he can get a good line in through to turns 1 and up the mountain straight, he can absolutely challenge upon where he stands right now. We see pulling away as Lopafido and Johnstone. We see here from Benton pulling away on that second row. Looking behind him, we see Eric Smith, a driver who challenged Benton every step of the way there, finished in a triumphant second place at the end of last race just gone. He's also gunning to emerge from the shadow of Benton, as well as the drivers up in front. They'll be both praying for the same kind of incident that befell race 1 start. Looking down the line, a driver who is caught out in the fray, still hunting for his chances of a Silver Division win. Daniel Richards in the number 450 Mustang starts 7th at the moment, and as it stands at the forefront of the Silvers. So he was furious to see how things panned out in that last race. He was on his best chances for a Silver Division win. And as it stands, he'll be looking to just survive, keep his head out of trouble, and keep a very close eye on the road ahead to make sure he does not find himself the victim of a huge pileup in this race coming. DiCaprio looking to clash with Odoni for the second race in a row here in Bathurst. They shared in a great fight. We saw that move by DiCaprio, that leap down through the chase. These two Porsches really in their element down through Sector 3, where braking becomes an absolute vital asset. And really having the better brakes is a huge defining factor in where you stand on those races. Those Porsches had a brilliant time down in Sector 3. We've seen it historically to be the case that Porsche, when left in the right hands, can flow like mercury around this track. It is a real Marmite, or I suppose Vegemite car in this context. It is a case of on this track you either love it or you hate it. You either hack it or you can't. These two drivers have proven they can hack it. We're curious to see how it unfolds for them again. Also keeping an eye here, Tom Wells cut his way through the field amidst the chaos of that race 1 start. We'll see what he can do again here in the Nissan. He's able to put up a pretty solid fight of things, all things considered. Went toe-to-toe with the driver just behind him there, Scott Brown in the number 32. They had a great little matchup when they were fighting for 5th. Keep an eye on Tom Barlow as well. We saw what he could do over on Competizione Performance League. He was denied the opportunity here in Bathurst on that race 1 incident. He'll be competing from the open category, hunting down Odoni. Starts currently at the back of that top 5, looking for a chance of another division win. So then getting back on board with our leading pair. Simone Lopafido at the forefront of the field. We see in the background there, that's trouble. I believe, is that? No, that's, as a matter of fact, that's for Will Taylor that had trouble. And the number 7, 11th place on this grid, had a bit of trouble out through forests. That's a confusing one. We see here Lopafido, followed by John Stone, followed by Benton and Smith. Smith currently tucked up in front of Benton, but they'll fall back into 2 abreast on the run down towards turn 1. We see starting from the pit lane, Free Chili from 20th on the field, perhaps knowing something we don't. You see then from Simone Lopafido's point of view, the tension up over that front row is so palpable you could cut it with a knife. This is going to be a very, very scary race start from where we stand here. I mean, this must be what it felt like being in the bunker during the first atom bomb tests. It's going to get lively between these two. Heading down, out through the chase, in towards Murray's turn 23. Looms just over the crest here. So we're about to get into race 2 of 2 today. Round 5 of Season 5 of the TRC Sprint Cup EU. What has been a very bizarre start to the story. Let's see how it ends here. Just into the second half of the championship here in round 5. Down towards the line then. 20 minutes against the clock for our second outing here in Bathurst. From the front row, Lopafido v Johnstone. Without further ado then, for the last time today here in Bathurst, we are green and racing here in New South Wales, and as ever, a great start from the front row, but where does it stand to go this time around? We see now falling back into single file, looking to avert the crises of the past. We see Lopafido take the helm of the lead of this race. We see Eric Smith has a very lively start there. Take a look here with Smith, the 555 up and alongside Sean Johnstone. So on our run down the mountain straight in through that dip just before Griffin's Bend, things could get very interesting between the 555 and the 99. The 99 on the inside, the 555 runs wide. That invites in the number 12. Speaking of the number 12, we see here with Justin Benton heading up through the cutting, up and around the outside on Eric Smith into 3rd. You see there, Eric Smith swallowed up by the tide of the rest of this field. We see a big trouble for DiCaprio. I nearly said for Coppola. No, that's for DiCaprio. And caught up in the midst of it all. We see this is absolute madness here as we see caught up on the run through Frog into Reed Park. This is absolutely disastrous. Now, albeit this is not a self-inflicted one where drivers have clashed heads and resulted in this detriment, you can see caught up in the midst of it there was Daniel Richards. He just can't catch a break in the 450. A disastrous start to complement the disastrous start of race 1. This time, though, caused on accident. So, with each their own there. I don't believe DiCaprio wanted to hit the wall down at Quarry, then through Frog Hollow into Reed. You see in the background there, Liat Stainfield hit the wall out through Forest's Elbow. They're down in 11th. You can see, though, considerable damages on the nose of that McLaren. Things not looking mighty for him. Meanwhile, we see here Simon Smith versus Mellon Vincent. This is for 9th place as they go barreling down towards the chase. The Mercedes, though, with the upper hand. Mellon Vincent also with damages to consider down through to the chase. Meanwhile, getting a look up towards the front of the field here. Let's see if we can go to catch on board. We see just briefly here with Jose Brito down to the chase. Running way out wide was Roland in the number 182 up in front. You see Liad Stainfeld still nursing those damages. He and, by looks of it there, Will Taylor dive to the pit lane on what has been a very shaky start here in race 2. Meanwhile, Daniel Richards fights with Jose Brito, but he is seeing red with damage on the nose of that 450. His chances of a Silver Division win once again scattered. Taking a look then as the dust clears on that lap 1 incident. Loperfido leads ahead of Johnstone with Benson for company. Smith not too far behind. Wells into the top 5. I did say keep an eye out for that Nissan, as he will cut up through the field, and that he did. Up into 5th place goes the Nissan. Tom Barlow in 6th, hunting down his chances as it stands then, as caught out earlier. Where's Eduardo Odoni? So Barlow into the lead of open category, looking at a division win again, to complement the many he has already accrued over the course of this season. He'll be looking to reinforce the losses he suffered over the course of race 1. Ryan Castle, we see here in the bronze category, is leading. 7th outright, but ahead of Francesco Gnassato in the opens. As it stands though, Ryan Castle is leading after the trouble he suffered in race 1. That number 33 has bounced back here in race 2. We already see drivers withdrawing as the dust clears on what was a sizable pile-up down through Frog Hollow into Reed Park. Further behind, we see is Simon Smith hunting down Francesco Gnassato. That's for 8th place. We see further behind them looks to be emerging a fight for 11th. Eduardo Odoni versus Nick Collins. And it's also worth noting here, Odoni right onto the back end of Melon Vincent. This is down the Conrod straight in towards the chase. Porsche up the inside. McLaren unable to do much on defense. You see that up in a 10th goes Eduardo Odoni, hunting down Tom Barlow for the lead of that open category. Meanwhile, that drops Melon Vincent into the sight tier of Nick Collins, as we now drop down to what is effectively 18 cars left. That could very well be 17 with Scott Brown in the pit lane at the moment. No current signs as to when the Lamborghini will emerge. We see Nick Collins for 11th place. Look up the inside here on Melon Vincent. Can he make this one clean? Very close to contact between the pair, but that switchback has put the McLaren back instead here for the fight of 11th. They're side by side on the run up the mountain. Collins, though, takes the helm of 11th place off of Melon Vincent. Up around Griffin's Bend we go. Now looking in here with the Mustangs just tucked in behind that leading pair. It's Justin Benton and Eric Smith, these two getting very close to each other, but it's worth noting that they're also getting sizably close to Sean Johnstone. This could very well be a Ford Civil War we're looking at, but before we get to that point, yellow flags are out. Jose Brito and Daniel Richards at the cutting, caught up in an incident. We see the pit lane get livelier and livelier. Will Taylor out of this round. The 182, that I believe is Roland, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, in trouble down at the cuttings. One of several drivers to be in trouble down in that area of the track. We'll catch up with them later on, though, as we take a look into finds that fight amongst the Fords, as things still are getting lively. Justin Benton, the man in the middle, then 3rd place in the pros at the moment. Finished on the leading step of the podium in the last race just gone. Well within his chances to fight for 2nd here after a bit of a hiccup through the chase by Johnstone. But he's got Eric Smith for company right behind him here. Very, very close at hand. On board then with Benton. This is a great place to be. He's caught between a rock and a hard place, but he's got front row tickets to this fight. Now we can look at this from 2 angles. Closer still was behind him Eric Smith for that fight of what is effectively 3rd. But also it's worth noting that he's gaining ground every now and again over Johnstone. That does put him, by that calculation, you know, within the fight of 2nd. It's a case of perspective here. Overall, you can make the argument this is a fight for 2nd place. If Johnstone continues to find trouble in some of these corners, he is inviting in both of these Mustangs, but leading the charge would be Benton for that fight of 2nd. I'd say right now, we'll say it as we see it. This is the fight for 2nd. Up through Quarry. And bumps against the wall. Sean Johnstone hits the wall. Up through Quarry into Frog Hollow. That moves Justin Benton into 2nd. Not if Eric Smith has anything to say about it. Up through Reed Park. It is all gone. Very, very pear-shaped. There for Sean Johnstone. Gone in the blink of an eye. The 99 hit the wall there down at Quarry. He's back into the pit lane. He's been towed to the pit lane. That's very likely to be the end of the line here in race 2. Bathurst is really the straw that breaks the camel's back here for so many drivers. We mentioned it at the start of the stream. It is indiscriminate on whose races it promotes and whose races it destroys. It is unilaterally feared from drivers of all skill levels. With the 99 looking to be out of this race, that leaves the 44 with clear line of sight of the race win. But for these two, now the fight has truly begun for second. And we'll catch on with them in a moment's time here. Taking a look further around the field, we see Francesco Gnessato fighting with Simon Smith for 7th. Behind him, Ryan Castle in the lead of the bronze category. Sean Johnstone, now the tally starting to fold in on where exactly he stands. He's down to the back of the field. Jose Brito there in the pits with him. Things have been a very, very bizarre day. Oh my goodness, we just catch on board there with Free Chili. Down through Brock's skyline, went out sideways, was just collided with there by the Lamborghini of Scott Brown. We'll see what the tally of damage is there for Brown. You can see sizable but not severe. It's really a discretion as to whether or not he wants to bring it into the pits. If he thinks the car is still operable, he can stay out. No one is calling him in to take those repairs. This would be totally by his own volition. So then, Eric Smith versus Justin Benton. Now, while this may not be for the race lead anymore, they are still finding themselves fighting 2 races on the trot here in the Land Down Under for podium positions. Making their way down through Brock's skyline then. And where we would have thought maybe the angle of the mid and rear engine cars would see greater trouble on this field. We've seen that when not affected by race 1, lap 1 incidents, I should say more relevantly, mid-engine cars can really cut away from the rest of the field. In fact, it's the Fords that have been a bit on the dicier end, and you'd consider that maybe it wouldn't be the case considering they've got a bit more weight weighing them down. They're not as fleet of foot down through the corners. It maybe would be a case where stability would be on their side. They got more weighing them down. But no. As we've seen, plenty of the Fords have struggled today. That's not to say the rest of the manufacturers haven't. But it is rather curious then that in spite of everything, Ford is now struggling on this circuit. 44 leads then. The 12 we've just seen in the time observing has now cut a distance away from the 555. Eric Smith tucks in for 3rd place. Tom Wells, I should point out, is in 4th with Tom Barlow in 5th. Simon Smith moves up to the lead of silver. That's much to the chagrin of the 450 of Daniel Richards, who was looking hopeful in his chances today. That was taken out of his hands there. It's one of the most gut-wrenching feelings for a driver in any championship, is to see those results that, you know, had the situation not occurred in front of you, you would have still very well would have been on track for that result at hand. That he's effectively a passenger in that incident up in front of him. What ended up happening there for DiCaprio on the race start up through Frog Hollow that led to that incident. That's possibly the worst place on track for you to have an incident as well. That's the tightest region of Bathurst. There's no runoff to be found up on the mountain section. In fact, your probably best chance to have an incident is either going to be down at McPhillamy, where you've got a lot of gravel caught on the right-hand side, or if you're down through Skyline. As a matter of fact, you can see here, there's that runoff to your left-hand side. Oh, hang on a moment. I just heard there, that was the sound of sliding. That's the 92. Melon Vincent, I believe, just ran into some trouble there in the McLaren, down through McPhillamy. Yes, you can see damage over the front. The 92... believe is, oh my goodness, having even more trouble. That allows Tom Barlow to catch up to Tom Wells. Tom Wells, with minor damage over the front of that Nissan, has now kick-started a fight of 4th. Let's go to catch on board with Tom Wells and Tom Barlow, for that matter, as they look to get into arms here for a fight outright on track here for 4th place. Bear in mind, Barlow's position at the forefront of the open category is secured. There's no risk involved here. This is simply for the love of the game that he will choose to fight with Tom Wells. And he's looking for it up the inside. Could this be a little too enthusiastic from the 23? Backs out of it. The number 1 holds ground. Does Tom Wells consider his odds to the pit lane? It seems the damage not severe enough to bring him in. So he's going to stick this one out. 7.5 minutes to the line. He's got a very eager number 23 parked on his rear bumper. Meanwhile, Benton v. Smith has re-engaged massively. Those two now just about a second away from one another. That does leave the opportunity open for that fight to kick off once again for second place. Benton defending, Smith attacking. So we see here Tom Barlow versus Tom Wells. Ferrari versus Nissan, the battle of the V6s. You see a bit of a rocky run through the cuttings, and that's courtesy of that front end damage. He's not going to have a lot to play with over the front axle compared to the Ferrari. We can see Barlow's using that to his advantage, but he's just not able to see a way around the Nissan. He's got to tuck in behind in the dirty air, doing more damage to his tyres, sticking around behind the number one, seeking an opportunity where it may exist. Here on Bathurst, though, you're starved for those chances, so he's just got to hold on here for dear life and pray something finds its way into the mix down the Conrod, because that's where the Nissan can really take off. Looking in then with Tom Wells' point of view, bear in mind he'll be in the forefront of this fight. You see here for Tom Wells with Nissan making his way down towards the chase. Takes a little dive there over the curves, but holds on to it. 3/10 of a second behind. Tom Barlow, could he be looking up the inside in towards turn 23? It's a bit of an ambitious move, but we've seen it attempted before. But he backs out of it in towards Murray's. 5 minutes left to go. And things have been as brazen as we saw it in race one, albeit this time was accidental, but still has created a huge calamity. Could very well see plenty of drivers out of this championship on a very frustrating ending note. For those who remain on the track then, there is still a race to be won. There is still a fight to be had. And they will seek it out wherever it hides. With just under 5 minutes left to go then, Wells and Barlow continue their fight. Let's take a look in though with the 12 versus the 555. We look over here, Justin Benton versus Eric Smith. Things very close between these two as it stands up through Reed Park. Through Solomon. Now to McPhillamy. You can see just how close they're willing to tow it to the walls there. The wall of death as it's known between Solomon and McPhillamy. 1.6 seconds then between Benton and Smith. We see Sean Johnstone is back out on track, so it is not the end of his race. He will be seeing the checkered flag, and you've got to hand it to him there, the commitment, even in spite of everything that's happened, for him to come back out on track and see that checkered flag. Every race finish is one that puts points on the table. That's what he's got to consider here, knowing that he's one of two drivers in the sort of air position for the lead of the pro standings. Now, it's been a rocky run for both of them. Coming out of this, then, they will still find themselves clashing heads further down the line into the next endurance race of the season at the Nürburgring at round 6. But moreover, where we'll be seeing these two next, if we bring up our itinerary for coverage, you'll be seeing TRTN's coverage of this season next of round 7 and 8, the penultimate and final rounds of this championship, where these two could very well go head to head for the championship title. Things start to simmer down then on the podium. Let's take a look in with some of the other drivers here. Barlow v. Wells at the back of the top 5, still going at it here. 4th and 5th respectively. Faster in the last lap by 2/10 was Tom Wells with Nissan. Battle of the V6s on the run up the mountain. 3 minutes then left to go. So for the leading driver, the number 44, Simone Lopafido, that it's going to be effectively, as it stands there, this is the penultimate lap, so he will be looking at the last lap coming up not too long from now. Take that with a grain of salt, because as I'm seeing it on the map, that 44 is moving very, very quickly now. on the exit of Quarry into Frog Hollow. Now through Reed into Solman. There's McPhillamy Park. Those two getting closer and closer to each other. It's definitely worth pointing out. We are very close at hand to the chances once again of a fight of 4th place. The number 44 making their way down through the chase to start the last lap here of race 2. Here in the TRC Sprint Cup EU season. Season 5, round 5. And what has been arguably the most controversial running of Season 5 so far. We see, oh, into the wall in the background there. Tom Barlow does his best impression of Ross Chastain. Riding the wall out through turn 18 there.
Right, man. Leader is on the final lap. Give it all you can.
Could that be the nail in the coffin on their fight for 4th place? Well, Tom Wells surely hopes so. I think that he doesn't have any more drivers antagonising for position on field. He'll be looking, as it stands then, at a Division 4th. For Tom Barlow, he'll be back on a winning form in the Opens. More on those two later on. You see here, 92 following on from the 24, Jose Brito and Mellon Vincent. Down through the dipper. You see for Ryan Castle, he's on track here to take his first Bronze Division win. This is an exciting moment then for the 33. And we'll have to double check all of that information as and when we have it. Yes, those are opens in front of him there, Barlow and Nesato. So for Castle, he is, yes, on the chances to see it. It was Jose Brito in the last race just gone and a number 24 Ferrari, but now we see a new name in the mix. This is an exciting moment for Ryan Castle. The Brit in the number 33, after a rocky run of things in race 1, sees redemption for race 2, but he's got one more lap to do before that result is definite. Catch on board here, Simone Lopafido on his way down towards turn 18. Now he's only got one more run of the Conrod Straight before the checkered flag. And he sees redemption in this race. The 99 in front there, that's Sean Johnstone. Had a bit of trouble out through Sector 2, is slowing down towards the chase. And allows the 44 to roll on through. Down towards the line then, we see them with the Ferrari of Simone Lopafido. Rounding out through Murray's Corner then, redemption in race 2 after a very rocky run of things here in Bathurst. It all comes up nice, neat and tidy for the 44. Sees the checkered flag and wins in Bathurst. Benton v Smith though, kicks back off. Smith very might have it into the wall. Goes Benton. These two absolutely mauling each other to the line. Who takes second? Will it be Benton? Will it be Smith? Benton up the inside. Smith looking to switch back down towards the line. It was absolutely down to the wire, but it's Benton second, Smith third. Tom Wells down to the line here for 4th. Tom Barlow behind him would be seeing the open category win. So whilst we've seen the pro category win, we see Tom Wells in the foreground go up for 4th place in the pros. Down towards the line, your pro category winner for race 2 of round 5, Tom Barlow in the number 23. From behind him, approaching the lines, the number 96, Simon Smith, set to become the silver division win here for race 2. Round Murray's he goes, very closely followed by Francesco Gnassato, but to the line, it's 6th overall and a division win for Simon Smith. Then we see for, sadly, a driver we don't have a graphic for, Ryan Castle, for the bronze category, comes down to the line here and revels in a glorious moment. The number 33 takes his first ever bronze division win here in Season 5. A great drive by Castle. 8th overall, survived the madness that is Bathurst to take his first ever division win. Meanwhile, you see here for Nick Collins, 9th place in this race, the 333. As it stands there competing in the Opens, we'll see, by looks of it there, that is a division podium. So all things that end well there for Collins. O'Doney 10th, Rollin 11th, Brito 12th, Johnstone 13th, Free Chili 14th, Brown 15th, and Vincent 16th. Well, race 1 gave us a lot to talk about. Race 2 did all but the same. It is a very, very confusing time then to be on this grid, I'm sure, for these drivers. At the end of it all then, we see a new swarm of race winners. So to recount, division wins for race 2, Simone Lopafido in the pros, Tom Barlow in the opens, Simon Smith in the silvers, and Ryan Castle in the bronze. What a dual set of races we've had here. It has been brutal here in Bathurst. A rather precarious round to have emerged on the calendar with those technical difficulties sneaking their way in the middle. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll not be seeing any of the trouble we went through to get this back up and running. But what a race indeed it has been here as we see all things wrap up on this circuit. That's the end of round 5 here of the TRC Sprint Cup EU Season 5. You'll be seeing these drivers next on circuit from our point of view on TRTN for the penultimate round of the championship. Before that, they've got round 6 at the Nürburgring, a double points single endurance race over at the Nordschleife on the 10th of March. You'll be seeing us next with these folks on the 17th for Barcelona and then the 24th for the season finale at Valencia. And things could absolutely hot up from what we've seen today. This is the staging point for a grand finale charge across all 4 fronts. It has been absolute chaos here in Bathurst, and we wouldn't want it any different. That's all from us here on TRTN. If you're catching us later on today, we're here for the opening round of Season 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series by Competizione Performance League. We'll be coming to you live in a few hours' time from Brands Hatch. Until then, that's all from us. Take care. Good night.